at here is, initially, why are we going to develop strength in power? What are the key reasons for doing that, and what are the implications of it? And again, looking at it through a sort of long-term athlete development model. How are we going to achieve this? And because this is looking at an optimal way of doing it, we're really looking at not just how, but what are the best and most efficient or most effective ways of doing this? And how does that lead on to power development? Well, if you look at the basic biomechanical principles, force is mass times acceleration. Mass, your mass is pretty much constant. It doesn't change dramatically. As much as some coaches would like us to get our athletes to put on 10, 15 kilos in a really short period of time, that's not going to happen. So in simple terms, if we increase force production, we increase our ability to accelerate. And that's to accelerate our mass, whether we're sprinting, whether we're jumping, etc. And you will have heard and no doubt read information about the fact that sprinting is horizontal. You're looking at somebody's horizontal velocity. But you're still going through full extension of the hip, knee, and ankle. Certainly on the first few strides, the initial acceleration, top end running, you don't reach full extension. But you're still going through that process. And whether you're sprinting, whether you're jumping, you've got exactly the same movement going there, okay? So the same joint actions, maximal force production, etc. So the key things that we're looking for are the magnitude of force production. Now, that's pretty easy. We just get people stronger. But what we also need to be concerned with is the rate at which we can produce those forces. Best way of reducing injury risk, as long as the athlete can move adequately, it's never going to be perfect, is to increase strength. If you increase the strength of the muscles, you increase the strength of the connective tissues, and by doing that, you actually increase their resilience to being put in inadequate or insufficient positions. If we can increase their aerobic capacity, they're not going to fatigue towards the end of a game. At the same time, both of those factors, maximal strength and aerobic capacity, enhance recovery rates. A lot of the time, we don't have the luxury to be just doing Saturday to Saturday. And you've got to recover more between each of these training sessions as well. Obviously, if you decrease incidence of injury, what you end up with is more time available for training and for competition as well. Now, unfortunately, within most sporting activities, we're looking at less than 250 milliseconds in which to develop the highest forces possible. From a lot of research which has looked at single joint high velocity movements, that's not what we do in sport. The other studies generally then focus on heavy resistance training or ballistic training. But again, we don't generally do one or the other. We'll have a combination of the two. And when we have that combination of the two, we'll emphasize either force or we'll emphasize movement velocity by manipulating load and changing exercise selection. So there is a problem with this. And the fact is that if we manipulate just intensity alone, if we go with moderate intensity, velocity should increase. And you think it would become a potentially more ballistic type exercise. But actually, there's a lot of ballistic exercises. If you look at the weightlifting derivatives, we can go above 100% of your 1RM. So we can still do ballistic exercises and make them very high load. And a study we've just submitted for publication, we've actually shown that the heavy load resistance training increases force at the early time points, so 50, 100, 150 milliseconds, etc., far more than doing moderate intensity training. But this was a combination of heavy strength training, heavy weightlifting derivatives. Now, for anyone that sat there thinking, this guy's nuts, he said you can go above 100% of your 1RM. That's not possible. If you're looking at weightlifting derivatives, where you're doing the pulling derivatives and you're excluding the catch phase, you're no longer limited like you are when you assess a 1RM power clean or hang power clean or whatever lift you assess. But you've got to displace the bar to about the height of your sternum. If you're using above 100% of your 1RM, you don't have to be able to pull it as far. There. Okay. And that allows you to enhance force production capability in really short durations. So in most cases, the key focus needs to be to increase force production. Now, I'm not suggesting that you just focus on force production, it's changing the emphasis. So, how are we going to actually get our athletes to improve their force production capabilities? I'm going to focus from this presentation about lower body, because that's the key area we need to be developing. So squats and deadlifts, they're probably the mainstay of everyone's training program. So we're looking at bilateral exercises where you can use really high loads, relatively simple and easy to teach your athletes. And you definitely get improvements in strength or force production capabilities. Then we've got the weightlifting exercises, clean, snatch, clean and jerk, etc. Do they increase maximal strength? No. Will they increase your ability to improve force at short time points? Yes, definitely. And the reason there's a question mark up there is if you're using the supramaximal loads with the pulls, what we've actually found with the testing we've done is if you're getting somebody up to 120 to 140% of their 1RM in a power clean, and we have tested loads that high, that's normally comparable to the loads that they squat. Exercises such as Nordic curls, yes, definitely have them in your program. There's so much research out there showing that they will create the architectural adaptations and the force production capabilities to not only reduce the risk factors of injury, but also decrease the incidence of injury. Eccentric training, obviously Nordics fall under that. Other types of eccentric loading, so supramaximal work using things like a K-box, J-hooks with extra weight hanging off the end of the bar. They seem to be effective, but there aren't any really good longitudinal studies showing that they will be. They're certainly not detrimental. Biggest problem is, if they really add a lot of eccentric loading, you're going to get a lot of additional muscle damage. It's going to take you longer to recover between that training session and the next session. And actually, unless you're already pretty strong, there's probably not much point doing that. So if we then look at plyometric exercises, are they going to improve force production or maximal strength? No. There's not enough loading there over a long enough period of time. But they will improve your ability to produce forces quickly, but it's the force that you can already produce. So if we look on the power side, power lifts, squats, deadlifts, etc., do they improve power output? Yeah, if you're not strong. So if you get somebody stronger, you improve their ability to produce force, and you get an increase in acceleration, higher velocity. If you've got higher force, higher velocity, obviously power goes up. Single joint exercises for power, don't bother, okay? And then plyometric training definitely improves performance, okay? In plyometric and ballistic power-based tasks,